Saigō Takamori was born into a world that was about to disappear. In southern Japan, in the Satsuma domain, he grew up within the traditions of the samurai. Discipline, loyalty and honor shaped his life, just as they had shaped Japan for centuries. But by the mid-1800s, change had arrived. Japan was opening to the world. Western technology, modern weapons and new systems of government began replacing the old ways. Saigō stood at the center of this transformation. He was not against change. In fact, he helped create it. During the Meiji Restoration, he became one of the key figures restoring power to the emperor. At the Battle of Toba Fushimi, his forces defeated the Shogunate. He also helped negotiate the peaceful surrender of Edo, preventing massive bloodshed. He was not just a warrior, he was a strategist, a leader, and a man respected even by his enemies. But after victory came something unexpected: loss. The new government he had helped build began dismantling the samurai class. Swords were banned, privileges were removed, an entire way of life began to disappear. For Saigō, this was not just political change, it was personal. Everything he believed in was fading. He withdrew and returned to Kagoshima, choosing a quiet life. But unrest continued to grow. Young samurai, stripped of purpose, began looking to him as a symbol. In 1877, they rose. The Satsuma rebellion had begun. Saigō understood the reality. This was not a battle they could win. The government now had modern weapons, while many of his men still carried swords. But he chose to stand with them, not for victory, but for honor. The fighting was relentless. Days turned into weeks. Rain fell over the battlefield. Men fell one by one, yet they continued. Finally, it came to an end at Shiroyama, a final stand. Saigō and a few hundred remaining men faced tens of thousands of imperial troops. They were surrounded with no escape. At dawn, the battle began. Gunfire filled the air, modern weapons clashed against tradition, and still the samurai moved forward, not because they expected to survive, but because they refused to surrender. Saigō was severely wounded. He knew the end had come. For a samurai, there was one final act of control, one final act of dignity. He chose to die on his own terms. On September 24, 1877, Saigō Takamori's life came to an end, but his story did not. Years later, the government that once fought him changed its stance. He was pardoned and honored. A statue was raised in Tokyo's Ueno Park, not as a rebel, but as a symbol of a man who stood between two worlds, who helped build the future but could not abandon the past. Saigō Takamori is often called the last samurai, not because he was literally the last, but because he represented something that was ending. A way of life, a code of honor, a belief that some principles are worth more than survival. His story leaves a question behind, not about war, but about conviction. What do you hold on to when the world around you changes?